If you want to learn what kind of tools and shading techniques pro manga artists use to create these amazing black and white artworks, then this video is for you. We've worked with over 200 beginner anime and manga artists, and one of the most common problems we see is that a lot of them are too intimidated to ink their sketches. Especially in traditional art, there's no undo button. Everyone is scared of making mistakes. When beginner artists create a sketch that they like, they're worried that they might ruin it by inking, let alone shading their art. Imagine if Clamp, the creators of Cardcaptor Sakura and Tsubasa Chronicles, or Hajime Isayama, the creator of Attack on Titan, got consumed by their fear of messing up. We wouldn't be able to enjoy any of their creations today. If you have a mountain of papers and drawing books filled with uninked sketches, then stick around until the end because we'll tell you how to ink and shade your next artwork. After this video, you'll be able to take a pencil sketch like this and transform it into this. FYI, the mission of this channel is to help you ignite your passion for anime and manga art. We want to help you develop your talent and build more skills so you can stop feeling stuck and frustrated and finally create artworks that you feel excited and proud of. If you resonate with this mission, please make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. First, let's learn how to create great-looking line art. Look at these two images. Which one looks better? It's the one on the right, yeah? Notice that some lines are thinner and others are thicker. Playing around with different line variations like this can make a huge difference on your artwork. There are three kinds of lines: the contour line, the parts line, and the detail line. The contour line helps define the shape or silhouette of an object or character. It's usually the thickest line in your line art, and it helps separate your subject from the background. The parts line is the line that defines certain parts of a character, such as the character's costume or hair. These lines should be inked slightly thinner than the contour line. The uneven lines are the extra detail lines that help to make all the hair strands, seams, and wrinkles on clothes look more neat and organized. Pro manga artists are experts in using those three kinds of lines. Let's look at this manga page. Do you notice the thin and thick lines? If you use a multi-liner or fine liner to ink something like this, it would actually be quite time-consuming and you'd have to go over your contour or parts line a few times to make them thicker than the rest of the line art. That's why pro manga artists don't use multi-liners. Instead, they use dip pens to save time. Dip pens have a flexible metal tip called a nib. You can create thin or thick lines with one nib just by adjusting the pressure. The more pressure you apply as you draw, the thicker the line you'll get. This is very handy for creating different line variations without changing pens. Warning: dip pens and fountain pens are not the same. Dip pens have a flexible tip. That's why you can create line variations so easily. However, fountain pens usually have stiff, inflexible tips. There are fountain pens made for manga, but they're not very common. We highly recommend you just stick with dip pens. If this is your first time hearing about them, we understand why you'd feel like dip pens are so difficult to use. Actually, almost all of the students we've worked with have never tried using a dip pen in their lives. But they've been able to create amazing artworks after just a few months, weeks, or even just hours of trying it out. Notice how our students were able to easily play around with their line variations using dip pens. If you want to know more about how to use them, we actually have a separate video. You can click the link in the description, or you could click this card on the upper right. Now that you understand how to create amazing looking line art, let's talk about how to give your artwork more depth through shading. The first thing you need to understand is how light and shadow works. Your first step, identify the light source. The scene, the mood, the feel of your artwork changes depending on where your light source is. Here's an example. Same scene, different lighting. Totally different impact, right? After that, we go to the next step, placing your shadows. There are two kinds of shadows, form shadows and cast shadows. Form shadows help you give your anime and manga characters a sense of volume and make them look more 3D. These shadows appear because of the shape or form of the object. In this picture, for example, the areas under the chin, around the eyes, and on the nose are considered form shadows. You need to have a great understanding of human anatomy so you know how light interacts with different parts of the body. Cast shadows, on the other hand, are the shadows that objects cast on their surroundings or other nearby objects. In this picture, for example, the cube is casting a shadow on the ground. In this manga panel, notice that the character is creating a cast shadow on the wall. You can tell that he's actually standing quite close to it thanks to how pronounced the shadow is. On this illustration, you see cast shadows on the ground created by the character and the ball. Notice how these cast shadows ground characters and objects in the scene. You get the idea of where they're standing, how close they are to the ground, instead of just looking like they're floating. Overall, combining both your form and cast shadows properly will help you create more volume and depth in your artwork, and it will also make it look more realistic. Pro manga artists use different techniques to create shadows in their manga. Some of the most common methods are hatching, cross-hatching, and stippling using dip pens, inking solid black areas using brush pens or fude pens, and also using screen tones. Hatching, cross-hatching, and stippling are very common shading techniques, especially with fine line tools like dip pens. You can control how dark your shadows are depending on how dense you make your lines or dots to be. If you're not sure how these techniques work, we've actually dedicated a whole video to this. We recommend you check that out to get more in-depth advice. We'll put the link in the description, or you can click the link on the card. You can use your dip pen to create shadows in your artwork, but at some point, there comes a need for thicker and heavier lines that aren't really possible with a metal point or nib. That's where a brush pen comes in. Brush pens, also called fude pens, are used for covering large areas. It creates more expressive lines and strokes for shading, textures, and bolder line work. You can also use it to fill in the hair for dark-haired characters. Fude pens have synthetic bristles as their tip, much like a watercolor brush. This makes it very flexible. You can create a wider line variation depending on the pressure, from thin to very thick. It takes practice to learn how to control them properly, but definitely well worth it. In terms of applying large areas of shading, another fast and reliable method is using screen tones. Those gray shadows you see in manga are actually made with screen tones. If you look at them closely, they're made of tiny repeating dots printed on a sheet of transparent paper. These dots help give the illusion of darkness and lightness depending on the distance of the dots to one another. There are so many screen tones designs out there. You can use them not only to add shadows, but also clothing designs and backgrounds. It makes manga creation so much faster. Traditionally, a mangaka would ink their page first and then add screen tones by hand. We've interviewed our Learn to Draw manga mentor, pro-Japanese manga artist Nao Yazawa, about how she applies screen tones. She still inks traditionally and then applies screen tones digitally. You can use programs like Clip Studio Paint to apply your screen tones. We know you might be scared of making mistakes on your line art, and the thing is, pro mangakas actually make mistakes on their final pages all the time, and they cover it up by using white ink. This is an actual demo of our mentor Yazawa sensei using white ink on her own artwork to make some adjustments. It might look a bit dirty now, but after this is scanned, edited, and published in manga, you won't even be able to notice it. We're sharing this with you so you know that no one is perfect. Not even the pros. So next time you have an amazing pencil sketch, try to take it to the next level by inking and shading your artwork. If ever you feel like your artworks are not turning out the way you want them to be, then we recommend checking out this video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in our next video.